Business was slow at the tavern last night. Now, that wasn't really anything new, especially with this past month. Unfortunately, that didn't keep my nerves from essentially spiking all night. Of all nights, this was the worst one to have no patrons, bar none. I was honestly about to just start emptying half my inventory myself when, lo and behold, my guardian angel granted its blessing to me. This blessing came in the form of these two bumblefucks who came stumbling in around 11:30. I'd say they were both in about their early to mid-20s, and they were dressed like they just came back from some Marilyn Manson concert. Neither one seemed to be able to walk straight without slamming into the other, busting up giggling every time they did like someone doped them up with anesthesia. Obviously, they'd already been indulging in a bit of the old hair of the dog that bit him in the ass. I wasn't gonna screw this up by opening my mouth, though. See, here's the thing with me. I've always been pretty lenient when it came to this sort of thing. My motto has always been, the money is always right. Hell, my champagne room in the back might as well have had a sign hanging over the door that reads, "Reserved for sloshed bastards," on the account of the innumerable times I've dragged patrons back there after blacking out. Just so long as you don't do anything so stupid that law enforcement starts breathing down my neck. And as long as you remember to pay up once you do come to. You can drink till half your bloodstream's liquor for all I care. Of course, my desperation went far deeper than that. In fact, I'd say that would have been the absolute least of my worries last night. See, I made a deal with someone a while back, and they'd be collecting that night. Think of it as a sort of protection payment, only for more than just my business. And it wasn't paid through traditional methods. Time was running out, and I needed these two if I was gonna make it out okay. "Welcome to Odin's Barrel. What'll be your poison, fellas?" They didn't seem to hear me at first, laughing their asses off as they clung to each other, trying to stay on their feet. I cleared my throat and repeated my standard greeting. This time, one of them, a guy with a spiked mohawk and shaved eyebrows, looked up to face me.
Yeah.
He slurred.
Let me have a bit of that white lightning you got there.
He pointed to the top shelf where I kept a stock of imported moonshine from Germany. "And what about you, pal?" The second one, this one with long bangs hanging over his eyes and a nose ring with a chain that connected to his earring, looked up and pointed, as best he could anyway, toward the shelf where I kept a surplus of Jack.
"Come on, dude,"
the Mohawk kid remarked.
"That shit's for white lightweights."
The one with bangs just shrugged, and they both plopped down on a stool. "So, what brings you fellas down to this neck of the woods tonight?" Mohawk smiled and blurted out.
We just, got back from band practice."
Making the rock and roll hand gesture. "Ah, so y'all are in a band?" I asked, pouring a glass of moonshine.
"Damn right. And we're gonna be playing in the cemetery. Ain't that right, Meat Hook?"
Meat Hook just smiled dazedly and held up a rock and roll sign of his own. "Meat Hook?" I asked stupidly. The kid just held up his index finger and curled it in the form of a hook. Christ, I thought, trying my hardest not to burst out laughing in their faces. "And what's your name, Butcher Knife?" The mohawked one's smile instantly dropped and he glared at me.
"That's fangs to you."
He then curled his index and pinky finger downward to form animal fangs. "Oh, my mistake," I replied calmly.
Yeah, just pour me the drink, asshole."
Remaining cool, I did as he said. "Just keep it together a little while longer."
"Bro, I can't wait for tomorrow."
Meat Hook piped up.
"It's gonna be fucking wicked." "Damn right, it will be."
"So, where'd you guys say you were performing again?" I chimed in after pouring Fangs a rather generous shot of moonshine. He looked at me again, glaring like I had no right to dare ask him any question, and replied,
"We told you, the cemetery."
"Ah, you mean Emberstone, just down the street from here." Meat Hook then chimed in excitedly.
"Yeah, dude, we're gonna do it at midnight, too."
"I see," I replied nonchalantly as I began to pour his shot of Jack.
"What's it matter to you?"
Fangs slurred, slamming the glass down on the bar. "Just wondering." trying to make conversation like any good bartender.
Whatever, just give me another shot,
he replied, slurring so bad now I almost had to risk asking him to repeat himself. Meat Hook went on.
Yeah, man, we even have these t-shirts that say, I survived the grave. Yeah.
Fangs chimed.
And we'll be playing right in front of that large grave with the angel, you know? The one that has the one chick people say is a vampire. What's her name again?
I grinned at this. You mean La Matrice de Sang?
Yeah, dude.
Meat Hook exclaimed.
She's real, you know. Not this shit again, dude.
Fangs scolded.
We told you last time, that's just a creepy legend to keep dumbasses like you up at night.
Now's my chance. I don't know. I'm not sure you should be so quick to discredit your friend here. He looked back to me, scoffing.
Don't tell me, you actually believe this shit too?
I shrugged. I'm just saying, you don't know what'll lurk in the dead of night while you're all cozied up in bed. He rolled his eyes.
Great, more hocus pocus. Have you seen her?
Meat Hook asked eagerly. Maybe, I replied, losing myself in memory.
Was she posing next to Bigfoot?
Fangs remarked, smirking.
Is it true that only one person has seen her and lived?
I looked at the clock. 11:47. Time's almost up. Tell you what, how about I take you out there and let you guys see for yourselves? I challenged. She'll be out by midnight tonight, according to legend.
For real?
Meat Hook blurted. Sure. And if you do, I'll even let your drinks be on the house. What do you say?
I'm in.
Meat Hook shouted, almost jumping off his stool. Fangs downed the last of his drink before replying.
Fuck it. Free drinks. Why not?
I quickly cut the lights off and locked up the barrel before heading out. On the walk to Emberstone, the other two kept arguing about whether or not the supposed vampire was real. It made me remember that night a year ago. Me and my old buddy Carter had been making this exact same trip. Much like the two idiots behind me, we would always debate whether or not we actually thought La Matrice de Sang, or the Mistress of Blood, was real. She had been a local legend from the days of our grandparents, and like all old folk legends, it was passed on down the lines, evolving with every time the story was told. I was never sure exactly how it started. The most semi-consistent account saying that it started after a man was found dead one morning, completely drained of blood. Supposedly, some claimed he was with a woman in the cemetery with dark hair and a white dress and red eyes. Since then, there have been around 14 people who have been declared missing after supposedly visiting on this night. Why that night in particular had been so special, I couldn't tell you. What I do know, though, is that she does come out. She did that night. I remember seeing her for the first time standing at the gates of Emberstone. Me and Carter had been walking home from his bachelor party when he got it in his head to, instead, head to the cemetery to test the legend. I, in my inebriated state, thought it would be a cool way to end the night and backed him up on his idea. At first, we thought it was a bust after 15 minutes of waiting around with nothing happening. I remember feeling a chill crawling through my body, but I had attributed that to unusually cold weather that had been present that night. Just as we were about to turn around and head back, however, we heard a soft, smooth voice call out to us.
Hello there.
Turning around, we saw a woman with long dark hair, bright scarlet lips, and wearing a white nightgown. Unlike what we might have been thinking, she didn't have abnormally pale skin or anything like that. Actually, nothing was really outwardly out of place for her. In fact, she was beautiful.
Come with me.
She said, her voice soft and soothing.
Come with me, and I'll give you a night you won't forget.
As piss-drunk as I was still hesitant. Even though I was the skeptic of the two of us, I'd still heard enough stories to know that encounters like this, supernatural or not, typically didn't end well for the unsuspecting. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be the case for Carter, who immediately began stumbling toward her. I shouted for him to stop, but he just kept walking. That was when I saw her eyes start to go red. Carter just kept shambling forward like a zombie through the gates. Finally, I started following after them. I could see that she was leading him to a gravestone at the far end of the cemetery carved as an angel. I saw in front of the angel a giant hole in the ground. I tried to shout to him again. This time he turned back to face me. It was too late by then, however. In what felt like a flash, Carter was seized and pulled screaming into the hole. I ran over as fast as I could to try and pull him back out. I held onto his hands, which were holding on for dear life to the edge of the hole, trying to keep from being pulled down further, to no avail. Eventually, his grip slipped from his hands, and he was yanked down into the hole. At first, I kept reaching down further to try again, until I felt a strong hand that wasn't his grab my wrist and start pulling me in. From the dark depths of the grave, I saw two glowing, pulsing red eyes glaring up at me. Using all of my strength, I just barely managed to wrench my hand free, sending me tumbling backwards. I could still hear Carter's screams coming from the hole. About a minute later, I saw her pull herself out of the hole. Her eyes were bloodshot, and blood was dripping from her bottom lip. I was frozen in terror as she started toward me, seeming almost to float rather than walk. As she got closer and closer, her blood-caked lips parted into a much more wolfish grin, as opposed to the warm and welcoming facade she had at first.
He was delicious,
she chided in a ravenous, demented tone. Wait! Surprisingly, she actually stopped for a moment. If you let me go, I'll give you whatever you want. Her sinister grin grew.
What I want is you.
You need blood, right? I beckoned. See, I own the tavern down the street, Odin's Barrel. I can bring others. Just please, let me go. She continued to advance until she was right on top of me. I closed my eyes. This is it. I felt her soft, slender hand stroke my cheek teasingly.
Very well. Consider this your lucky night. I will let you go, on the condition that you deliver others to me in your stead, on this night, so long as you still live.
I just nodded my agreement.
Look at me,
she commanded. I complied and saw that her deranged grin was gone, replaced now with a cold, malicious stare.
Fail me even once, and you'll only wish that your end would be as graceful as your friends.
She pointed back toward the hole.
Understood?
I frantically nodded like I was a bobblehead. Her warm, sweet smile returned as she turned and headed back to the grave. The last thing she said to me that night was,
I'll be waiting.
The family was of course devastated about Carter's death. In the end, it was just ruled an accident, stating that falling into a grave must have broken his neck. They didn't seem to acknowledge the unusual loss of blood, nor did they try and hunt for anyone matching the woman's description. Eventually, though, everyone moved on from it. Everyone, that is, except for me. I knew that when she said that if I were to slip up once, that was it for me. And tonight was the first night for me to pay up on the end of my bargain. When we finally reached the gate of Emberstone, it was empty and quiet. I looked at my watch. 11:59. Any time now she would be coming.
Well,
Fangs jeered.
Here we are. Where's your freaky vampire chick, huh?
Ignoring him, I motioned them to follow me inside. I led them until about the middle of the cemetery and pointed to the angel headstone. That's it, over there.
What do you mean? Aren't you gonna check it out too?
Meat Hook asked. I shook my head. No, I gotta head home.
Lame.
Fangs retorted.
Come on, dude. This is obviously bullshit. Hold on, dude. I wanna see her.
Fangs sighed and groaned before they started walking toward the grave. Have fun. Good luck. I then turned around and made my way to the exit. Before leaving, I took one last look behind me toward the grave. She was there. White dress, dark hair, and red eyes, beckoning the boys forward. I could almost swear she looked past them at one point to me, silently giving me an attaboy before looking back to them. On the walk home, I closed my eyes and shook my head as I heard what sounded like faint screams in the distance. Admittedly, I wondered if maybe she'd extend the mercy to one of them like she had with me. That optimistic idea died the next morning, however, when I saw the headline in the morning news. 2 rock band members found dead in an open grave inside Emberstone Cemetery on the morning of concert. I won't lie here, part of me does feel guilty for what I did. That said, a deal's a deal, and I'll be doing this same routine again next year with a fresh patron. In a way, I can't help but find it funny. Last night was, in more than one way, what you'd call a dead night. Yet, my debt was still paid on time.